Good morning. I'm Reverend Aaliyah Kemmler, minister of First Parish Church of Groton, Massachusetts. I use she, her pronouns. Lee Kinvey, our intern minister, and I are so very glad you are here. We are a community seeking to deepen spiritually, to take care of one another, and to be a blessing to this world. Unitarian Universalism is a faith for all people. So whoever you are, whatever country you've come from, whoever you love, whatever you've done, whatever your abilities, challenges, or gifts, wherever you are in life's journey, you are welcome here. Our congregation welcomes and embraces a wide diversity of beliefs. We invite you to freely translate the language we use in the service. If God is not the right word for you, substitute love or spirit of life or goddess or nature, whatever works. Our spiritual community is vibrant and alive here in Groton, Massachusetts, along with members and friends across the continent. If you would like more information about First Parish Church of Groton, about any of our programs, events, or small groups, just email welcome@uugroton.org, welcome@uugroton.org, and we will be so glad to get you connected. We have learned through the pandemic that our sanctuary is not confined to any building. We create it together in so many ways. These days we are also worshiping outside at 10 o'clock on Sunday mornings in front of our meeting house, so you will see that some of this service was filmed there. Whenever and from wherever you are joining us, we hope that you will be able to come on in, to rest for a while, and to receive hope and strength. You are so welcome. So these words are by the German theologian Meister Eckhart. They're called The Hope of Loving. He wrote these in the 13th century. It sounds like he could have written them yesterday. What keeps us alive? What allows us to endure? I think it is the hope of loving or being loved. I heard a fable once about the sun going on a journey to find its source and how the moon wept without her lover's warm gaze. We weep when light does not reach our hearts. We wither like fields if someone close does not rain their kindness upon us. So we light the chalice this morning for love that allows us to endure and grow and change. It is time for a story, but first let's say our words for gathering and do our hand gestures together. We are Unitarian, Universalists, with minds that think, hearts that love, and hands ready to help. So this story is called In a Jar by Deborah Marcero. Once, there was a small to medium-sized rabbit with long white sticking up ears named Llewellyn. But since this is a story without pictures, you get to make the pictures in your head, and so Llewellyn can be a different kind of rabbit, or not a rabbit at all. You can imagine Llewellyn exactly how you want to. But the important thing to know is that Llewellyn was a collector who loved to collect things in jars. Llewellyn loved to walk through the white birch trees in the fall and collect the falling leaves. And then at night before bed, Llewellyn held the jar and peered inside and remembered all of the wonderful things they had seen and done. Llewellyn collected small, ordinary things like buttercups, feathers, and heart-shaped rocks. I happen to know that some of you collect small, ordinary things like heart-shaped rocks. Does anyone collect anything else? What do you collect? Yell out loud so we can hear. Zoe, what do you collect? Stickers, acorns, strawberries, seeds, feathers, photographs. What else? Rubber duckies. I love these things. Pencils. I finally got it. Well, one night, when the sunset painted the sky the color of cherry syrup, Llewellyn ventured down to the shore with as many jars as they could carry, and there was another little rabbit named Evelyn there. Now, Evelyn was a tall, light brown rabbit with floppy ears, but again, you can imagine Evelyn however you like. Llewellyn scooped some of the cherry light into jars and gave one of the jars of light to Evelyn. Evelyn took the jar home, and to Evelyn's surprise, that jar of light glowed pinky red all through the night with the memory of the sunset. And from then on, Evelyn and Llewellyn collected things together. They collected things that were hard to hold. Things like rainbows, the sound of the ocean, and the wind just before the snow starts. They collected things you wouldn't even think would fit in a jar, like whole swooping flocks of birds, but somehow they did. They collected the wonders of winter, snowshoeing in quiet woods, hot chocolate, red foxes and firelight and holiday lights. They collected the newness of spring. They collected whole fields of tulips and snails and lightning and tadpoles and ducklings swimming for the very first time. And they collected the long days and the shadows of summer. And over time, their jars filled the walls of Llewellyn's house. But one day, Evelyn had sad news. Evelyn's family was moving to a new city, and too soon it was time to say goodbye. With Evelyn gone, Llewellyn's heart felt like an empty jar. Has anybody had a heart that felt like an empty jar? Yeah. One night, Llewellyn lay awake. Falling stars glittered against the dark sky, and Llewellyn wondered if Evelyn could see the stars too. Llewellyn tiptoed out into the moonless night and collected the meteor shower in a jar. And the next day packed up the jar very carefully and mailed it to Evelyn. Maybe Llewellyn asked one of the passing motorcyclists to bring the jar to Evelyn. And when the box arrived and Evelyn opened the jar, the stars in the night sky rose up all around her, and Evelyn knew just what to do. Evelyn went out and collected the sounds and the crowds and the noise and the bright lights of their new home in the city, and sent them all to Llewellyn, who had never seen so many people or heard such noise or seen such tall buildings. And so when the golden leaves of autumn began to fall once again, Llewellyn set out to collect a jarful for Evelyn. A little rabbit named Max was already there. Luckily, Llewellyn had brought an extra jar. The end.
Good morning, everyone. So the choir is about to sing a piece by Mark Miller called Only Love Can Do That. The words are by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and they go like this. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Hatred cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. So we're going to sing it through twice. If the Spirit moves you to hum along or sing along with those words and second time through, I would encourage you to do so.
Darkness If you like, you could get yourself a candle to light now, or perhaps a little bowl of water and a stone or a rock, or you can just hold these prayers in your heart. So I'll invite you now to enter with me into a spirit of prayer. Persistent Spirit of life and love, we're here with so much on our hearts, so much that weighs heavy. Have we tuned in here for worship service out of habit, from a yearning ache, a sense of obligation, a curiosity, a hope for community? We all come and we peer under the fear. We peer under and glimpse the courage to reveal our love, to open our minds and hearts to ourself, and to tell ourself and each other the truth of how it hurts sometimes, the truth of how scared we are sometimes, and the truth of how we sometimes shine. The truth of what Muslim theologian Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi wrote 800 years ago. This world is in deep trouble from top to bottom, and it can be healed by the balm of love. We extend the precious balm of our community's love this morning to Ellen's nephew Davin, following extensive cancer surgery, to May's daughter, Jen W., to Pamela W., who's having back surgery this Wednesday, to Christina A., who asks for prayers for a certain second grade class at Swallow Union that's experiencing a COVID cluster. We offer our prayers of healing for Lisa's Aunt Jean, who has COVID in Montana, for Bob's sister Anne, for Jackie's mother Sandy, for Carol's sister Lois, for Christopher, for Doris, for Wendy, for Martha's nephew Jeremy, and for Bob S. We offer our ongoing prayers of healing for Karen A. and our joyful celebration with you that she was able to come home from the Brigham yesterday. We offer prayers of strength and gratitude for all who work in healthcare and in congregate care, for this incredible planet we live on. And we offer prayers of wisdom and clarity for elected officials everywhere. Each of us holds prayers and celebrations in our heart, and we bring these now to the spacious grace of this community and this moment. We hold these knowing that the sanctuary that holds them with us is not constrained by physical distance.
So last Saturday was Groton Fest, the Harvest Fair here in town. Some of you know we did a gratitude project at the church booth this year instead of selling our usual whoopie pies or brownies. We asked people of all ages to come and write down one thing they are grateful for on a card. And then Donna Nowak pasted all the cards onto the church last Sunday. So if you were here, you know that the meeting house was festooned with all of these bright yellow rectangles of gratitude, which was a beautiful sight. And the things written on the cards were this mix of sweet and surprising and poignant and hilarious. People were grateful for their families and friends, of course, and also for their dogs. There was gratitude for the weather, for shelter, for being alive, for being able to make ends meet. There was gratitude for toys and gardens and music. Someone was grateful for the Cookie Monster, and someone else was grateful for a pigeon named Oliver. A pigeon named Oliver is something to be grateful for. Lee and I sat on opposite sides of the church booth and tried to attract customers. Lee sat under a sign that said free listening. I sat under my sign saying the minister is in, profound questions answered, 25 cents. But this year I crossed out the word profound and wrote in any, because I learned last time that it's too much pressure for people to come up with profound questions. At any rate, I think Lee was the better deal because I didn't get a lot of business this year. So per usual, I bombed my first question entirely, which was from Michael Preston, who at age 8 or 9, how old is he? 10, is now a veteran at the question booth. And I suspect he spent the last 2 years dreaming up this question for me, which was, why is yellow called yellow? But Michael's question, I learned as we talked about it some more because I was stalling for time, wasn't just about yellow, it was actually about all the colors. Why are they called what they are called? Who got to decide that the color of a lemon or a sunflower is yellow? Michael wanted to know, where do these words even come from? And do we all see yellow the same? I had no idea, and I promised to do some research and report back to him. So according to the online Encyclopedia Britannica, the word yellow derives from Old English giolu and the Germanic galwaz, and it has the same linguistic root as the words gold and to yell or cry out. Yellow is one of the oldest colors in history, seen in cave paintings over 17,000 years ago, because the yellow pigment from ochre was readily available and one of the first colors used in cave art. Yellow was a sacred color because, like gold, it was seen as eternal and so associated with the sun and with the gods. And then I did some reading about Sir Isaac Newton, who invented the color wheel. And I read about the science of colors and how the colors that humans see most easily are the first colors to be named in almost all cultures. And then I read about color perception and cones and rods and spectrums of light and nanometers, and I had to put Michael's question in the too hard pile. I think many of you already know what the too hard pile is, but because the too hard pile is so incredibly useful, and some of you have told me it was actually the best spiritual teaching I ever gave you, I will do a quick recap. So years and years ago, someone Alan knew had an office administrator who left their job. And after they left, the person Alan knew, who was the supervisor of the office administrator who left, found in the file cabinet this big, thick, huge file stuffed full of papers, and the file was labeled "too hard." So it turned out that all the things that the office administrator couldn't understand or didn't have the will to deal with in all of the years they worked there just went into that file. Unanswered requests, emails, memos, bills. Now, since I tend to keep stuff in piles instead of file folders, for me, the too hard file morphed into the too hard pile. But more than any actual pile, the too hard pile has become a category in my mind. It is a place where I can put things just for a while until I feel ready to cope with them. Now, it works in just about any form. You can have a too hard email inbox. You could have a too hard drawer in your kitchen. You can do it with anything. Impossible tasks on your to-do list, moments in relationships, even feelings. Sometimes just letting things rest in the too hard pile softens their sharp edges and untangles their knotted cords and makes it possible to pick them up again. I think sometimes we realize that we put things in the too hard pile that are not actually our problems to solve. Or we remember that all feelings do pass. So it turns out that most of the questions I got last Saturday at Groton Fest were in the too hard pile. One guy yelled out across the field, "Hey, is God real?" I yelled back, "I think so." He walked over and said, "Can you prove it?" No. He shrugged and walked away. Then someone came and sat down and asked me what to tell his little great-granddaughter, whose mother had just died of COVID. How do I explain this to her? He wanted to know. We talked for a while. I said there are no words. There's no explanation that can ever make any sense. The only thing that makes sense is your presence and your love and trying to keep the memory of that baby's mother real for her as she grows up. But there's no answer for that situation. It is just in the too hard pile. And then finally, I had to put the question about immigration and how to solve the heartbreaking crisis of people waiting at closed borders all over the world because the countries they call home are being destroyed by violence or poverty or extreme weather in the too hard pile. I don't know is not a satisfying answer, especially if you have paid a quarter. But it was the only answer I had. I think there's a lot in most of our too hard piles right now. Anger and bewilderment and sorrow about people, some of whom we dearly love, who have chosen not to get vaccinated, and are endangering the children and the elders. Anger and bewilderment and sorrow at leaders, both religious and political, who seem to deliberately mislead people for the sake of their own power. The plight of the people of Haiti, whose country has been destroyed, the devastation of the climate. More and more, I realize I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the answers, and sometimes I don't even have an opinion, much less an argument supported by facts and justification. My son is a highly skilled arguer with many facts stored in his prodigious brain. He's also incapable of mincing words, and he has told me several times in recent months he thinks I ought to get my brain checked. But I don't actually think my brain is the problem. I think it's the times we live in. In the face of the giant too hard pile, I have to come back to what I know, to what I am certain of, that love, as messy and imperfect as it is where I want to live as much of the time as I can. And that love is the best answer I have for pretty much everything. As Rumi puts it so simply, the world is in deep trouble from top to bottom, but it can be healed by the balm of love. I return to the words of Meister Eckhart, a contemporary of Rumi's. What keeps us alive, what allows us to endure, it is the hope of loving or being loved. There's another poem by Meister Eckhart I have long loved about a little burro, which is the Spanish word for donkey. It's called Love Does That. All day long, a little burro labors, sometimes with heavy loads on her back, and sometimes just with worries about things that bother only burros. And worries, as we know, can be more exhausting than physical labor. Once in a while, a kind monk comes to her stable and brings a pear. But more than that, he looks into the burro's eyes and touches her ears, and for a few seconds the burro is free and even seems to laugh. Because love does that. Love frees. This is the love that I believe in, the ordinary, daily kind. I believe we can bring each other pears and look into each other's eyes. I believe, actually I know for sure, that it helps. We can collect heart-shaped rocks for each other and send each other jars of light. So our closing song is called I'm Gonna Lift My Sister Up. It is by Fea Ora Rose Torre. It is a modern hymn, but it is written in the tradition of African American spirituals. Fea Torre is a civil rights lawyer, a social justice activist. and the state of Alabama's first Black woman judge. So will you rise either in body or in spirit, and let's sing together. So, please be seated. I have to explain all the things. So before the benediction, I'm going to tell you these things. We'll do our benediction. There'll be the postlude music. During the postlude music, you are welcome to come up and place a silent stone for a joy or a sorrow, a worry, a weight, or a celebration into the water. If you would like to write down what your stone is for so that Lee can pray it at night in the sanctuary during the week, you are welcome to do that. There are cards on the table, and there are cards on the table, or Barbara will bring you one. And as is becoming our practice, we will invite the grown-ups of little ones to come up and do their stones first so they can be reunited with their children in relative calm. And I beg you please to take a cleanup job so that we can get our sanctuary put away before the rain comes. Okay, so now I think please rise again in body or spirit. I didn't want you to have to stand for all of that. So put a hand on your heart and with the other reach out and let's look at one another. Know that we are connected, we are tied together by strong and sturdy threads of love. Go in peace. Be a blessing to this world.